This is Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and me and him, we have a interesting relationship. Because while I've always enjoyed Tom Holland as this character, his movies, on the other hand, have been a little bit more questionable. Homecoming and Far From Home were fun. They were fine. Like, I'm not gonna act like they were bad movies, but they always felt to me like they could be something more. They were these very enjoyable, lightweight stories, but with a character like Spider-Man, it's hard not to feel like we could do better. And when we came around to No Way Home, we started to get better. While the first half of No Way Home was very much the same jokey, lightweight feel of MCU Spider-Man, the second half of No Way Home took that character into a place that we had never really seen before. Darker, more emotional, and just having real weight to the story. And so coming into Brand New Day, the question on my mind was, are we going to regress, or are we going to get the truly emotional Spider-Man story that we've been waiting for? And ladies and gentlemen, the verdict is in, and this movie has heart. Now I'm just gonna get this out there right at the start. I don't think this film is perfect. I don't think this is the best Spider-Man film ever. I don't think it's like the movie of the year or anything like that. But man, I am just so happy, and I almost can't believe it, that we have a Tom Holland Spider-Man film that is this dripping with emotion. A Spider-Man film that hits you in the feels as much as this one does. This is a movie that focuses heavily on the struggle of Peter Parker's double life and how his responsibility towards Spider-Man low-key ruins everything. And that's perfect, because we all know depressed Spider-Man is the best Spider-Man. And it's one of those things where you've spent 3 movies with this character that you start to think, maybe it's just not in the cards. Maybe it's just not possible with this iteration of Spider-Man for me to feel as emotionally connected to him as I really want to. But they did it. Like, I genuinely could not believe in the first 10 minutes of this movie just how connected I felt to Peter. I was sitting there like, we could have been doing this the entire time? Now, it's hard not to feel that this movie is heavily inspired by previous Spider-Man films, specifically the Sam Raimi trilogy, and specifically Spider-Man 2. Obviously, on a very broad story level where, yeah, it is a Spider-Man story where Peter's body is not working properly, and it centers on the struggle between Peter's personal life and his hero life. But even in some more of these very specific moments, like right towards the beginning of the film, there's a scene of Spider-Man saving a kid from oncoming traffic, and I was like, Spider-Man 2! And we all know Peter's getting the organic webbing in this movie, and there is a moment where Tom Holland's character is dealing with the organic webs and trying to figure it out that is straight up ripped out of the first Tobey Maguire film. Now, this movie has a different director, and it's called Brand New Day, so you might think it's really trying to distance itself from the previous trilogy. And yes, it is, because it does feel very different to those 3 films, but at the exact same time, it really uses the previous film as the launch pad for this story, where it pretty much takes the ending of No Way Home and fully capitalizes on it. It uses where that story left Peter as the grounds for a very emotional story. And like I said at the top, this movie is not perfect, and I do think the film works better on an emotional character level as opposed to a plot level. Like, I was thinking about Across the Spider-Verse, which in my opinion is still the best Spider-Man film, and that movie has you gripped. Like, that movie has you on the edge of your seat, and there's a lot of excitement about the plot where you're just like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? This movie doesn't have that, okay? My balls, we're not getting gripped in this film. There were no moments where I was truly on the edge of my seat with this film, and while emotionally the stakes feel very high, on a plot level, I have to admit, I don't feel like the stakes ever really felt all that dire. And I do see now why they tried to keep Sadie Sink's character a secret beyond just, a marketing push. Because once you know who she's playing, the story does become kind of predictable. Like, within the first 15-20 minutes of this film, I kind of got the idea of, okay, I can pretty much see where this entire story is gonna go. And I feel like for a lot of you guys, it will be a similar experience where once you know who she's playing, you'll start to put the pieces together and go, okay, I can sort of see the arc of this movie. Now, that doesn't mean it's bad, because even if you know where a story is going, if it's done well and it has a lot of heart to it, it's still compelling to watch. But yeah, truly with this film, the best moments is the character stuff, the character interactions and conversations, almost the parts of the film where the plot is kind of put on pause, and we're just dealing with Peter's struggle with his friendship and his love life. Like, I could have watched an entire movie of just that. Now, going into this, one of my biggest fears or concerns was how were they going to handle the ending of No Way Home? Because the ending of No Way Home, I think, is amazing. I think it's perfect, with Peter making this big sacrifice of not putting himself back into the lives of his loved ones. And now, having seen it, I do think they handled it in a fairly good way. Obviously, it's kind of tough to talk about that specifically without getting into spoilers. And even by the end of the film, some things are still kind of left up in the air, so it almost feels like we might have to wait till the next film to really know how exactly they've handled the ending of No Way Home. But for the most part, they treated it at least with a certain level of difficulty. It doesn't feel like this easy thing where we're just undoing the ending of No Way Home and running back to status quo. Another thing that I thought was cool about this movie is we got into the other side of the spell, which is, how do MJ and Ned feel about it? Like, how do MJ and Ned feel about Peter basically making that choice for them? Which is interesting, because we as the audience are like, Peter made this wonderful sacrifice, and obviously he didn't really have a choice, like the universe was about to break. But obviously, there's another part of it where if you're MJ, you're probably sitting there like, you just brainwashed me? What the hell, dude? Now, moving off the story here, let's just talk about the look of this movie. Because this movie looks so different, not only to the previous MCU Spider-Man films, but really to just most MCU films in general. Like, there's something about this film that feels so real and tangible. Something about the cinematography and the lighting where it was almost jarring for the first 10 minutes, where I was like, this doesn't look like any other MCU film maybe that I've ever seen. And that tangible feel also translates over into the action where, man, in the first 10 minutes of this film, I could not believe how good the action looked. Like, some of the swinging that Peter is doing in this movie, there was a moment where, you know when you're going on a roller coaster ride and that drop happens where your stomach just plummets? Yeah, it happened to my stomach in this movie when Peter jumped off one of these buildings. And on top of that, some of the point of view shots where you're swinging and you're literally in Peter's vision as he's going through these buildings. Oh my goodness, it just looks so good. It also felt really cool that in this movie, we once again have a living, breathing Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I know a lot of people were very concerned with the overabundance of characters being in this movie, but I have to say, it's handled really well. None of the characters, like Yelena or Bruce Banner, for example, overshadow Peter or distract from his story. They just kind of slide in here in a way that makes sense. In a way that feels like, yeah, we are in this universe where all these people exist. It makes sense that Peter might go to them for advice or to have a conversation, but not in a way that ever overshadows his story. Another one of the characters who's in here that I was very concerned about going in is, of course, Punisher. Like, how are they going to handle this very R-rated character in a PG-13 movie? And I have to admit, it was totally fine. I was freaking out for no damn reason. Were there certain moments in here where I thought Frank would probably not say that if he was not in a Spider-Man film? Yes. But for the most part, I actually thought he fit in here in a way that was completely believable, where it still feels like the Frank we've always known. And I think especially because he's dealing with Spider-Man, who is a kid, even some of the softer edges that Frank has in this movie kind of make sense, and it does feel in character for Frank. And as for the violent killing, they just don't put him in a situation where he has to brutally murder someone. So, a pretty easy workaround. And Frank and Peter's banter in this was hilarious. Like, some of the funniest moments in the film are coming out of their older brother, younger brother dynamic. And I have to say, this movie is still pretty funny. Even though it's a far more emotional Spider-Man film than we've gotten before with Tom Holland, that doesn't mean the movie loses its humor. Like, when the movie's going for jokes, they still land. It's just that the film overall is doing it in a more balanced way, where the humor is not overstepping or causing the movie as a whole to feel less serious, but it's served to us with just the right dosage, and when the movie goes for that humor, it totally lands. Now, is this the best of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films? Well, for me, it's clearly better than Homecoming, clearly better than Far From Home. When it comes to No Way Home, though, that's a bit more of an interesting discussion. Because while I will say, this film is more consistent than No Way Home, in the sense that the entire film throughout is pretty quality, whereas No Way Home to me is much more a tale of two halves, where you have the first half, which is similar to how I feel about Homecoming and Far From Home, but then the second half of No Way Home is like spectacular. I'm not sure that Brand New Day reaches the heights of No Way Home. Like, the highs are not as high, but also the lows are not as low. So it's tough to say which one I would overall, put higher. And I'll probably have to watch the film again to really make that decision, but it's very close. Obviously, so much of this film is difficult to talk about in a spoiler-free manner because the literal plot of the film is wrapped up in a spoiler. So I will be doing a spoiler review, so make sure you guys come back for that. But until then, have you seen Spider-Man Brand New Day? If so, what'd you think about it? If you haven't, what's your anticipation level? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, guys, click on the screen to see another video. And hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.